Hello, my wings, back to another Fabian channel. I'm Jacob, J Books Corner, and today we're talking about my top 10 best books of the year and also my most surprising book. A book that took me completely off guard that I thought, there's no way I'm going to like this, but guess what? I loved it. Essentially, we're going to start with the most surprising and then we're going to work our way down from 10 to 1. The way this works is that all these books are 5-star reads. I read 50 books this year that were 5 stars, which is just blowing my mind. I'm very, very happy with that number. Overall, my star rating I was pretty happy with as well. I'm not going to share stats and stuff here. We're still reading books and things, and so there's still a possibility that there could be a new book before the end of the year that could be a 5-star read. That being said, all these are 5 stars. All these I recommend with a blanket. I recommend my most surprising as well. My most surprising, I will have to say, is I think it's a 4-star. I don't think it's a 5-star, but it definitely was the one that caught me the most off guard. That being said, I'm sure you can hear a cat in the background. I have Angelina in here with me today. She's beautiful. But that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about my most surprising book of 2024. And yes, I do have one, and she is Immortal Longings by Chloe Gong. Immortal Longings by Chloe Gong is one of those novels that blew my mind when I read it. I read it back in February of this year, and it stuck with me all the way to the end. To be fair, the #1 book that I read this year is from March, so you know how it goes. But Immortal Longings, like I said, was a 4-star. It follows 2 people who are inside this world where there is a special magical power where you can jump between bodies. And in this world, they put on a game every year, and the person who wins the game, who can survive the game and stuff, gets to meet the king and queen. Because the point here is you want to jump bodies before you die. After you die, well, you can't because you die. You are dead. That's essentially like the way the magic works in the system and things are those lines. I really like the characters. I really like the writing. I think Chloe Gong in an adult setting is exactly where I wanted her, where I thought These Violent Delights should be, and also has the most beautiful world building, just like I expected for Chloe Gong, because that was like the one thing I really enjoyed about These Violent Delights, but I really did not like the story. I really didn't like a lot of the other stuff that were involved with it either, and so I was just really, really impressed, and I recommend. So that's my most surprising, and you're like, oh, that's a pretty glowing review. All these are getting glowing reviews. The next one is Hellfall With Us by Andrew Joseph White. This is a book I've had on my TBR since 2021, I think. And I kept pushing it off, and I was doing a video, which I'll link up here. It does give a spoiler for that video, but I will link it. And then it's trying to find a 5-star YA novel, and this is the novel that I found. So like, you know, if you want to see the process of how I got here, I read like 14 books for that video, because YA and me are not friends at the moment, and I don't think we're gonna be friends for a while. There's objectively nothing wrong with that. Essentially, Hellfall With Us follows a boy. He is a trans boy, and they live in a world where apocalypse happened and there are angels that walk the earth. Religion is a top priority, and our main character is escaping from this really religious cult that they're a part of, and him and his dad are escaping. His dad is murdered in the first like 2 pages. It's not a spoiler, and it sets off this thrill ride going to this LGBTQ youth camp where a lot of people like him are being protected and being loved and being really cherished and things. And they're trying to figure out a way to retaliate to take back the earth from these angels, and it's full of body horror. It's full of really questionable relationships. It's full of great characters. It's full of amazing writing. Did I mention the body horror and that fucking ending? Oh my god. I really do hope one day that this gets adapted into a movie, because like after seeing The Substance this year, I just feel like there's a vision, and I feel like it's very possible. The next one I read was Rakesfall by Vera Chopkotsky, I think is the author of this one. Rakesfall, I also gave a 5-star. I read this. It was on my 25 and 25, or 24 and 24. I adored this novel as well. It's a novella. This is about 2 people who are star-crossed lovers, in every universe they're destined to die. They're destined not to end up together, but they are colliding forces, and the way it's written, the themes, just everything about it, I think it's just so beautiful and so perfect, and the author did such an amazing job, and I don't really see a lot of people talking about it, and I think that is a shame, because I feel like more and more people should be talking about this book. It was so good. Number 8, I actually do own. That's great for me. Number 8 is Bladebreaker by Victoria Aveyard. This is the 2nd book in the Realms trilogy. I decided to go with Bladebreaker because Realmbreaker is, I think, a 4.5 or 4.75, and then Fatebreaker was also a 5. But this one has the ending that I just absolutely adore. This series is about what if the people who were supposed to save the world died, and now you're having like the underdogs do it instead. That's the whole point of the series, and I think Victoria Aveyard Graveyard, one of my favorite things, I mentioned this in the review for Fatebreaker, is that there's a map in here. This is the map for the world that she created. We visit every spot on this map, and I just think it makes the world feel so much more alive. I think the characters are so vivid, and I think the execution is just so perfect. There's just something about it that just fuels my soul, and I'm so excited to jump more into Victoria Aveyard. I'm so excited for adult romantasy that should be coming out in the next year or two. I'm definitely gonna plow through the Red Queen series this year, or in 2025. Could not recommend this series enough. If you like War of the Rings, if you like dragons, if you like great characters, a really, really dark romance in here as well, which is really, really fun. The villains are in love, and it's super cute and super good. Very angsty and things. Very, very good. Highly recommend. It is YA, but it does read more adult in my opinion. The next one is The Cat Who Saved Books. Speaking of cat, hi. But the next one is The Cat Who Saved Books. That is, I don't remember who wrote it. It's a translated copy, I know that I read. But The Cat Who Saved Books is about a grandpa dies, he has a bookstore. His grandson, who has been living with him and working inside this bookstore for a while now, he grew up in this bookstore, ends up really taking the death really, really hard. He was really, really close with his grandpa, and he ends up not wanting to leave this bookstore. He is needed by a cat who can speak, and the cat says, I need your help to save reading, I need your help to save books. There are so many futures that are going on parallel to this, or universes that are going on parallel to this, where books are being destroyed, books are being consumed not in the right way, and things are those lines. And so you follow this boy with this cat who go on this journey into like 6 or 7 different worlds, and each one is talking about several different things. We're talking fast reading, we're talking summarizing, we're talking cutting down, like, taking away the prose. Like, it's weird little stuff, but it's also some big stuff. I personally felt called out for it while reading it, which is always fun. I know some people don't like that, but I personally don't mind it when it happens. Could not recommend it enough. I felt like it was beautiful. I felt the writing was beautiful. And I do feel like there is some type of reaction that's going to come out of you based on the subject matter and things, but I just think it's worth the trip. Number 6 is The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. No one's shocked that Casey McQuiston's on this list. I think the only year that she wasn't was Shara Wheeler, but then again, I could have put her on here as a most surprising, just for funsies. I don't remember. But her newest adult romance is on this list. They are beautiful. Like, oh my god. This Fall Stealing Kid, they essentially are together in the beginning of this novel, then they break up right before the novel begins, and they had plans to go on this European vacation. They had 2 years to accomplish this goal until the certificate expires, and they decide the last day that they're both going to go separately. So both Kit and Theo end up meeting on this trip again 2 years later after their lives are changed. And then they get together, and then they decide they're going to fuck as many people across Europe as they possibly can while admitting that they don't have feelings for each other anymore. My personal favorite character was Kit. I thought Theo was enjoyable, but I liked Kit's personality a bit more. The romance is super sweet in here, but also there is a second relationship that's splintered throughout. That's not them. It's like they're, I don't want to give it away. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my fucking god. That's all I got. It broke my heart. It was so beautiful. The next one is the first book I read this year, which is Heartstoppers Volume 5. Oh my god, did I just read gay books for the beginning and last? I guess I did. Sorry. It was a realization. Heartstoppers Volume 5 by Alice Oseman. This is the latest Heartstopper, the one before the end, which is crazy to me. This takes us all the way up into this winter, which is a novella that she wrote. The only book in Nick and Charlie's world that is not a graphic novel. They do pop up in other books. As you know, I have a whole video talking about it and stuff. So there's some reveals in here that I already knew were coming because I read this winter, because this winter it's fully detailed throughout as well. This was more what I wanted from Heartstopper than the last 2 volumes were. This was, in my opinion, the perfect balance between super intense writing and the beautiful cutesy romance that we all love for Nick and Charlie. This was a warm hug from a very bad day, and it was spectacular. Could not recommend. If you want to see me read it in full with some slight spoilers, I recommend this book. Oh my god, Angelina, I told you no. Angie, really? You went up there? Is that really what the purpose of this is? Number 4, oh my god, I forgot we were in the top 5. I normally announce that. Number 4, we're in the top 4, I guess we'll go from there. 4 is Kiss Her Once Room by Alison Crocken. Alison Crocken is a author that I read a few years ago for her debut, which is Charm No Offensive, something under those lines. Very, very cute. Follows a bachelor dating show. Gave it a 5 stars. Excellent for anxiety rep. Then her next book that she released was Kiss Her Once for Me, which a lot of people talked about when it came out, but I didn't really realize who the author was. Also, I wasn't really sure if I was going to like it or not. I did. This was obviously a 5 star. And then later on this year, I also read Here We Go Again, which is her 3rd novel, which came out this year, which is also a 5 star. Here We Go Again, which is not on this list, it wouldn't be a most surprising either. It would just be like a number 11. I picked one per author. Here we go again in particular. I think the relationship in the forefront is really good. I really liked it, but I really love the B storyline. And if you really love the B storyline from the pairing, I think you'll really love the B storyline from Here We Go Again. That being said, Kiss Her Once for Me, which is my number 4th pick, it follows a girl who is having a really, really bad Christmas in the prologue, and she ends up meeting another girl who ends up sleeping her off her feet. This girl, she has to really get to know you before you guys can even touch. That's what this type of main character is and things. Demisexual, I think is what it's called. I can't remember exactly. This girl checked all the boxes. She had the perfect Christmas with her. And then something happens the day after. You find out later on, but you don't find out in the very beginning. And a year later, we are introduced to this character again. She is still very strung up on this one girl, and she's still trying to figure out what to do with her life because of X, Y, other Z reasons, which you can figure out when you read the book. And she ends up going on a date with her boss, like out of blue type of moment, and he proposes to her and says, hey, I really need to get fake married for this inheritance, and then we can get divorced and you can get half or you can get like a quarter or whatever they end up figuring out the deal for. And she said, sure. And they get to his Christmas house because a part of this deal is that they have to spend 7 days with his family for them to believe that they're in a relationship, for them to be able to get the inheritance and get married and things. She realizes that the person she's in love with is his sister, and it's super cute, super complicated, very fun. It's really intense in certain places, but it hits all the parts. And also it's the perfect winter read. Oh my god. Alright, number 3 is Every Time I Go on Vacation, Someone Dies, the first book in Catherine Mackenzie's brand new series, the Vacation series, I think is what it's called. The second book is in my, got kicked out of my 5-star prediction, spoiler alert, but it is in my 25 and 25. It comes out next year. But Every Time I Go on Vacation, Someone Dies follows our main character. She's a writer. She's writing her 10th book, and she decides to kill off the main love interest, and then after this point, after the 10th book, she plans on just moving on in general from the series, the murder mystery series that she is writing. She's really prolific for the romance central in the thing. And so her editor, her agent are all saying it's a bad idea to kill off the love interest, but she says it's a great plot forward for the main character. His love interest is based off a guy that she did date named Connor, who's still very much in her life, who was getting death threats at the same time she was planning on killing him off, and that's the whole point of the novel. It's very tongue-in-cheek. The author is like writing the book to you, and so there's footnotes and there's like little things of like, oh, remember this, or ooh, did you see that coming, or things like that. It's very cute, very fun. I had a great time. I fucking love the main character of this book. It's so good. It's so perfect. Now, my number 1 and 2 spot, I'm very sorry, they are repeat authors, and I think they both have had 1 star, like my top books of the year. That's insane to me, but we're gonna move on from it. My number 2 book of 2024 is Funny Story by Emily Henry. This just hit all the notes for me personally. I had the absolute best fucking time reading this book. Like, honestly, it's really interswitchable between Every Time I Go on Vacation, Someone Dies and Funny Story. But here's the thing, every time I go on vacation, it wasn't really shocking of a read. Pretty forthcoming for the mystery aspect. Funny Story was just a beautiful romance. It follows 2 characters who are about to get married, and then both their partners end up dumping them and then getting together with each other and getting married and getting engaged in things. And so the girl ends up going and saying, hey, I need a place to live. And he says, cool, you can crash here. They get invites to the wedding, and they decide to start to fake date. You can just see where it goes from there. It's beautiful. It's Emily Henry's writing. It's Julia Wayland reading it to you. What more can I ask for? Honestly, I want to say, because I read this and People We Go on Vacation With, which I almost have tempted to put on my most disappointing books of the year, but I gave it a 4.5, so I figured it had to be a little lower than that for being most disappointing. It's just every other Emily Henry I've ever read gave it a 5. Funny Story is no different. I think it's worth the hype. I think it's everything that you could ever want. The next book that we're going to talk about is Angels of Indian Lake, the final book in the Indian Lake trilogy by Stephen Graham Jones. The first book is My Heart is Chainsaw, and yes, I'm going to explain to you what it's again, even though I have to say it because I didn't really post as many videos as I was hoping to this year. I've talked about the series a lot by this point in time, but we're still gonna talk about. So the first book, My Heart is Chainsaw, follows our main character named Jade, who she believes she's going through a modern day slasher. And you follow the experiments and stuff. The way I've always recommended this, the first book, in my opinion, is a slasher, but it's a slow burn slasher. So if you're looking for the gore, it happens about 75% in, you're going to go through it. Now, because I did reread the entire trilogy back to back, which is the way I recommend, I was really not prepared for the uncomfortable situations that Jade finds herself in, or the uncomfortable conversations that are happening around Jade in book 1. My brain brain just totally skipped it. So please look up the trigger warnings. Book 2 is a very, very much more in the lines of a big slasher. It's gory from page 1 to page 400. It's perfect if you're looking for like a hardcore slasher, okay? Book 3 is like the middle, like the baby child between those two. It's like slow burn, but also like really, really like, oh my god. There were elements of book, like if you watch that vlog, you can see me wavering between, is this perfect, is this not? And by the end, I had decided it was exactly the story that needed to wrap up this trilogy. However, there are really, really uncomfortable conversations popping back up again that I do think wrap everything up really nicely together, but it's really hard to get through. I would say the last 35% of this novel, it was a huge ass challenge, but it was perfect. It was perfect. This is a perfect trilogy in my opinion. This is my favorite trilogy of all time. I feel very confident in saying this. I would say the next one I read was like Realm Breaker, which is two very different vibes, but you can't get better than this in my opinion. You can't get better horror than this. You can't get better writing than this. You can't get better characters than this. I don't really want to tell you anything because this does take place 8 years after the first book, but I highly recommend reading them back to back because Stephen Graham Jones as a writer definitely does not hold your hand with his reading. He's just going to throw you into the deep end no matter what. So if you're taking 6 months off in between reading these, you're thrown into the deep end 4 years later expecting to remember all the characters, expecting to remember who survived, expecting to remember what happened. And there's always a character in it who's like really fascinated with the murders that happened previously. However, it's not so overt that like I do find it somewhat confusing. Don't Fear the Reaper was such a true slasher for me personally that it got a 5-star for that reasoning, but it got like a solidified 5-star. My Heart is Chainsaw, because I did not realize it was a slow burn slasher when I read it, was not an initial 5. It is initial. They're all 5s. In my opinion, at this point in time. I will always hold in heart that he liked my review, saying, this fucked me, because it did. Because it did! This one fucked me worse! It did! It put me in such a weird headspace after I got done reading it. What a beautiful, perfect trilogy, though. I'm very excited to read it in the new year. I can see myself rereading these on a constant, which is really hard and really weird to say based on the subject matter that's involved. I'm basically that person who's like, you know, like when if you're in the horror space on Twitter, where the meme's like, oh, my comfort movie is like, I don't know, Mary Poppins. And the horror fan's like, oh, my comfort movie is Terrifier 2. This is basically the definition of like some people's comfort book is like Funny Story. My comfort book is Angels of the Yet they're both my comfort books. But yeah, I'm gonna hop off here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know what your guys' favorite book in the year, favorite book of the year down below. I might make a video reading them. I don't know. We'll see. So please let me know in the comments down below what your favorites are. And I'll talk to y'all next time. Thanks for watching and goodbye.